Oh, did he? I think Rob's got new trousers.
Let me see your face. There, that's more important.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, I'm
Hi.
on the wrong camera. That's the problem. Okay.
I was looking at your pants.
I know, I know. That's because I have my screen tilted down.
Yes, we know how screens work.
It still is.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, Deanie, while we're waiting for the gang together,
Gotcha.
I've been looking at the Adobe VR 3D apps because I'm very much an Adobe person. So I may start experimenting there. I had a really good session with Leon last week in Blender, but Blender doesn't feel right to me. I'll use it if I have to. But if the Adobe tools can be used to produce assets that can be imported into Maya and so on, great. It's just so I can.
We haven't been using them because they don't. I'll ask the students if they've had any good luck with the more recent Adobe. We're going straight into Maya and Blender, mainly because that's what's expected, and also we're using Unreal Engine for Rob's project, and Unreal works really well and seamlessly with all the assets we're building in Maya. So when we move them in game, I say we build a spaceship in Maya, then we move it into the game.
Wait. Okay. There's only four of us, but we have to sing. It's Fabian's birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Fabian. Happy birthday to you. And as a birthday gift, I'll never sing to you again.
That was
Years, Fabian.
41 years.
Ah,
I double checked last year or yesterday. I wasn't even sure.
a mere child.
Say a mere pup.
I went a whole entire year getting my age wrong. So yeah, and that was a long time ago. It was not dementia. It was the stupidity. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm eating, so I have the cam off today.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for that courtesy.
I'm going to show you what I did just before the call as a, let's say, birthday experiment to myself. Let me see how I can do this. And let me know when you can see my screen, please.
Hi. Hello. And happy birthday, I guess.
Yeah, it's Fabian's birthday. We did one song, but when there's more of us, maybe we'll do another.
And it's on record, the song, right?
And yeah, I don't want to, yeah, I'm going to release it. Wow. Well, hang on. This is physical world, right?
Yes, it's an ice skate ring.
Yeah, you may be 41, but you act like you're 14, and that's a problem.
I'll take it as a compliment, thanks. And that's the instant speed at the bottom, movable plots, and that react basically if you hit them or not, and that's a path to follow if you want. And that's the other side. I did not edit the videos together, but yeah, it tracks literally.
How much better is the pass-through on the 3 compared to the Pro?
So I honestly, I don't know, it's slightly better. It's not, I don't think it's radically better. I think people who go crazy of the pass-through of the 3 have not spent so much time on the Pro. So of course, compared to the 2, it's really way better, but compared to the Pro, to me, it's not radical.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So, and we have many topics to discuss and things to do, but one specific thing. So, the last week has been really, really tough. As Deanie knows, we've been dealing with a lot of stuff, but at least we got our foundation grant submission in, so that's good.
Wait a minute, just breeze over that. Okay.
No, I'm not breezing over it. I'm just worried about putting too much emphasis because, jinxing all that.
No, this is a big deal. We got the grant done at 4 o'clock my time on Friday. And those of you who've written grants know that there's a lot of, I think there's something like 15 files. We had to get an order in the right formats, linked together, sent in approvals through the university system, which is huge. Got it through like that. It just went like this, Rhoda, bam. So anyway, very exciting. And I celebrated on Friday night.
Good.
Glass of wine in hand.
I mean, there is something very important to learn from that experience, because working with you and your university has been transformative for me, because you do the stuff I cannot. So yeah, no, that's been amazing. And I think we should, as a community, talk more about how we get things done, because we clearly have very, very different skill sets, talents, interests, etc.
I do want to say that my wine of choice is Chablis. I do not drink American Chardonnays. I've been to Chablis many times and I like that wine a lot.
Well, when you're here, it's gin and tonic. So there we go.
I'll bring my own bottle.
BOYB, yes. Good idea. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, if all of this goes well, we're going to have Future of Text in the middle of Washington State next year. So that's a good thing. Just plan ahead, get cheap tickets. Secondly, yeah, so today I had a good little morning with my coffee, all very nice starting the Monday. And then a little too caffeinated, had to go for a walk, went to one of the really nice big bookshops in London, feeling stress of the world. We all have various stresses at this point. And walking around the new section of a bookshop can be quite inspirational, right? So I was thinking, I really want to write a book. And of course, that is what we're doing. We are making a book. And then I thought, well, we can't just print a book and put it on a bookshelf. That doesn't really serve what we're talking about. So all of that introduction is just to say the volume 4 that we're working on now, we really should work on it together to make sure that it is as readable in a flat version as possible, in order that we can have a version in XR. If we don't take our own content and make it extremely readable, and Fabian, I'm not just saying PDF at all. That's the official line for the project. But if we can export it as HTML or whatever the heck it is and make it amazing, we should do that. Is there a better term than dog fooding? Using your own content, because dog fooding is so silly.
I've never heard of that before.
Very Silicon Valley thing. Use your own system to build your system, that kind of stuff. Eat your own dog food.
Bootstrapping, but it's not usually for content, but
Of course, it had to be the Central European who reminds us of Doug Engelbart language. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Bootstrapping is what we need to do. We need to use what we have to get to the next layer, next level.
It's a kennel here.
Yes. Oh, yeah, no, I'm waiting a little bit for Leon to join us, which I hope he will soon.
There's Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Email.
Hi.
I spent the weekend doing letters of recommendation, 3 of them. That's all I did, is write letters of recommendation. So I'll answer you today. I'm so sorry.
We have to use latex, Peter. I'm glad Peter is eating, so he cannot talk. I'm going to ignore that comment in the chat there.
Well,
All right, we're waiting for Leon, but I'm going to show you something anyway. So please tell me if you can't see the screen. This is what Leon and I worked on a little bit on Thursday. First of all, he gave me a tutorial of Blender, which was quite phenomenal. I feel I can use it now as a beginner person, which is better than nothing. And then in dialogue with Dini, was clear we needed to clean up this site a little bit. So the key thing we've done here is we have, as before, XR experiments and experiences. So these are the kind of formally known, done things that someone in the community has done. But then we have this new thing here now, XR repository for off testing. Oops, should be 4. Ignore the man behind the curtain. doubly ignore that. Okay. Yeah, this is so cool. Right, click on this. Currently, there's just one thing. We now have a GitHub thing. And just email Leon and me, or me, whatever, and we will make sure you get access. This is all open and public. So if you post something here, it's public. And here's an example of how we post it. All we do, because we generate a URL, there is apparently some more magic that Leon wants us to do, but we haven't done it yet. So this is the simplest thing possible. I did this in Blender. Yay. So we made a link following this logic. And if we click on the link now, it opens straight into the VR environment. So if I was on a headset, I could click a button and it would be here. It actually works. The white space indicates nothing. So this is actually AR. How amazingly cool is that? So the thinking is that as we have these meetings and we try little things, we must make it super simple that everybody can just put on their headsets. We keep talking on Zoom, but at least we can try stuff when we're together.
Can you automatically add us to the GitHub repository since we're all part of the advisory group?
No, I can't do it automatically like that. You will have to send me the email address you use for GitHub because it's not always your main address, and then I'll do it immediately.
Okay, well, mine is the same, but maybe
It is,
other
okay. Well, then I can do that. Let's see. Does this seem, I'm trying to add Dini now, so I'm just going to ask you without seeing you. Does that sound like a reasonable approach, guys?
I mean, people are dropping it right now into the chat, so that would make sense.
So, okay. You know, it's amazing. We can all be like techie people, but if it's a slightly different domain, we're like children. So, see now.
So
This
mine is .com. So that is where I put my repository, even for my university stuff, because I keep it separate.
That's cool. And now just have to find a way to add people, contributors here. No, that doesn't help.
And we
Fabian,
use
where do I add you? Or anyone else know how to add someone?
I can't see the screen, it's too small.
Yeah, sorry. It's got to be
I think it's in settings on the top right, because I think it's settings per repository. On top of, no. On top of code and slightly to the left. No.
how can this
See
not
the
be?
search bar?
There's a settings here as well.
Yes.
Right there. You should be able to add people.
Collaborators.
Yeah.
Have to relog in, that's fair enough. Add people. Oh,
Here we go.
I can't, you have to give me your full address, please.
Mine is dgregardmac.com.
I think if you search, the login is fine.
Hang on. I got the thing. Okay, so. This couldn't be more clumsy. Boom. Added. Okay, so Dini is in.
Can I ask you something, folks? Are you using Perforce when you're developing as a group in VR? That's what we're using. And there's a free educational version that allows for 5 people to have access. And it's not quite like GitHub. It's not a repository, but it's an environment that lets you work together in that space. So it'd be interesting if Leon uses that and if he'll add us to it, if he's got an educational version. You should be getting an email that asks you if you're accepting the invitation. You should access that and say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Peter, that didn't seem like the right one. Mark and Michael, you have accounts? Do you want to put in the chat? Okay.
I've just done it. There's nothing on it apart from a couple of tests or something I abandoned, and the email associated with it is my normal mac.com one.
At iCloud or mac.com?
Mac.com, mwra@mac.com.
Okay.
As short as I can get it.
Maybe, maybe not. Let's see. That was a bit odd. If I click on the link here, Peter. Yeah, no, I don't get a link to join you from here. I need your email address in here, the one that you use.
I've just answered an invitation, so I seem to be able to see the XRF playground now.
Thanks, Rob. I saw yours. Adobe. We just went through this. Why did that page disappear? Did I close it?
I'm not quite sure which of my email addresses it's associated with it, but you can try this.
Okay. No, I'm back here.
Doesn't really tell me in profile.
You have contributors there. See on the right hand side.
Yeah.
Right now you've got those folks there.
Yeah, but this doesn't allow adding though. It's so
The settings, and then you go to
yeah, I think this was the one we found it, right? Collaborators.
collaborators, and then you add here.
And Michael. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Trying yours, Peter. Oops. No, that probably not. Do the
Thanks.
quadrangle one. So yeah, is anybody in? Is anybody? Oh yeah, you started to approve. Good. I mean, Fabian, if you want to go in and look around, feel free. Edit stuffs and so on. Oh, you're on the phone. Okay.
So can I show folks? You can download if you've never used GitHub before. You can download from the main page. You hold down the green button, you can see the little arrow, the green button that says code. You can download the zip.
So here's a question for everyone. Should we distribute our journal and our book through GitHub, even though it's just a PDF and maybe an HTML?
GitHub is normally used for code and for code projects.
Yes.
And I don't think people would, I mean, you're expecting people to know to go to GitHub. I would think that you might want to have maybe a Dropbox link instead for the book.
Yeah, we have a Dropbox link, but I'm wondering if for interactions to make it easier to integrate with software that'll read the book. But yeah, it's not that.
It's an asset. I mean, normally you have all your assets in your file in GitHub, so they're not separate entities. At some point, the book will be integrated into the GitHub repository as part of the project, not a separate thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense, yes.
Yeah, I think also that for a certain part of humanity, anything involving a trip to GitHub is a stay away sign. So the answer in a way is sort of both. Yeah, there's no reason not to have stuff accessible, but I wouldn't make people. I'd also offer links to it that don't involve them having to open GitHub, because I've just seen it too many times that people see that and they just close out. That's too technical for them.
VH people will be more apt to do it, but if you're trying to expand your,
I'd accept that, but I think it's worth bearing in mind.
Oh, I completely agree with those comments. This would just be in addition to a normal download link.
Sure.
I'm also wondering if it'll be useful to convert slowly page by page, volume 1 into what we have now, so we can make one volume with all 4 books in one document. Because part of the whole thing we're trying to do is make it not just a linear read, and more stuff to get your teeth into.
Yeah, even better actually would be to find some way to put it into HTML. Because then
Yeah.
That's
I agree. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say I agree.
so what are we working on today, Frodo? What do you have on our agenda?
No real agenda. We are waiting on maybe Alan, maybe Randall, because they have been stretching the discussion a bit. So unless someone else has something on the agenda, I would like to talk a little bit more on this subject of our book, on how we can make it even now more readable. And it's amazing to have this XR link, upload something. So once Fabian is off the phone, I have questions for him.
Can I recommend something for next week?
Of course.
Next week, I should have a good working version to share of Rob's project.
Oh, fantastic.
We've been busy making assets. So there's 3, in level 3, there's 4 puzzles. And each puzzle is very different and has a different set of media. So we used the second puzzle, which is a series of gifts that as you are inside this cloud gate, they are on panels hovering in front of you, and you select one of them by reaching out and touching, and you pull it towards you, you grip it towards you, and all the other panels kind of go into the background and dim. This one is you're holding on to hard light and you're looking at the panel, right? And then you put that one back and grab the others, and you have to access at least 6. So there's a guard fields. Of the 6, there's 6 that you have to read, right? But there's 12 that are in front of you. So you may have to go through 8 of them to get to the 6 within the Garfield. And once you hit the 6 in the Garfield, then you trigger Homer talking to you, right? And having conversation and giving you more data that you need to move to the next puzzle. And Homer becomes more human as the puzzles progress. So we should have leveled the second puzzle to show next week, and hopefully moving from puzzle 1 to puzzle 3, so you can see how the progress goes. So this Wednesday, we're throwing a lot of things into the VR environment, and I'd love to demo that next week. Yes.
Will we be able to access it from our headsets?
Well, we could make it available. We don't put our material on GitHub because we use Perforce. We're using Perforce, which is what VR game folks are using, right?
Right.
And so I will make it available at the end with Rob's permission, but right now I think it's still in pretty much beta. It wouldn't make sense. But I'll demo.
Can we have a temporary link so we can be in it just for the session next week?
Yeah, I can try to do that. But certainly I'll have a video, and I'll have a video clip of it, so a playthrough for you to see next week. And I'd love to show that and get your feedback.
Oh, that's very good.
Rob's okay with that. Rob?
I'm okay with it. I just heard from Gilman Louie, who was the programmer.
Yeah, what did he say?
And I was asking him about LA Crackdown, which was another game that I worked on. And he just told me what I did, because I don't remember.
What's he think about your game being a VR environment now?
Well, I wanted to work on my soon to be new Vision Pro headset.
Yeah, that'll be a while. I am trying to get a Vision Pro version of Reader, a really basic one done very soon. We have one now that doesn't really do anything. Once we have one that does something, then I'm going to apply for Apple to do one of their workshops here, so we could actually experience it. Then I can give you a lot more feedback and comments that Randall ever could, because I don't work for Apple. So I can say things. Hopefully we
Well,
get our.
once you get that workshop started, you let me know so that
Oh, yes.
maybe I can come and bring Andrew, my programmer.
That's-
Jeannie, can you send me a link that I can give to people to just access something? Like
Soon,
Gil, I'd like to give him some access to it.
have something soon. Hopefully on Wednesday. On Wednesday, the other cool news is there's the game industry is really building in my part of the world, my town, my city, and this new company that's developed. Actually, they've been around for quite a while. They do VR projects for Mark and Spencer. But they're coming on Wednesday to do a cherry picking through the game dev team to hire them for their game dev, which I'm excited. But he's going to give us kind of a dog and pony show about his company. But he works with Nike, Mattel, and Marks and Spencer. So
Yeah, Marks and Spencer have been a bit controversial here lately, but that's another thing.
another thing.
So
But what I'm saying is, Rob, is that probably on Wednesday we'll have stuff for you to be able to show.
That's fine.
So question, Michael, you are the newest here. We talked about lots of things back and forth, but since you have come back, and since you may come back in the future, what do you see this community as being? And to put it bluntly, as we all ask all of ourselves all the time, what would you like out of this community?
For myself or for everybody else?
Primarily for you. Clarity always helps.
Well, that's a good question. And I also wondered, I think it depends largely on the point in time, because currently my priority is finishing the dissertation. And from spring on, I'll be open for new job opportunities. And then I can be open again for new projects and new ideas and new responsibilities. So until then, I'll do my best to leave it open and not get involved in too much else.
Michael, what's your dissertation title?
Actually, I prepared a presentation about my dissertation work for today. It doesn't have to be today. And we talked about having the presentation today, but we can also move it to another meeting if that's better. Which doesn't at all answer your question. So the title is Unraveling the Fidelity of Virtual Reality Interactions.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, Rhoda, if we have time.
Yeah, do you want to do that today, Michael?
Sure, why not?
No, that's great. Just a few minutes. I'm just going to interrogate Fabian a little bit.
Here.
Just, now that he's on the phone, I was trying to cue things up here. So, Fabian, do you have a link to your current work that you want to have on our website?
It's always the same link, so yes, I guess.
Okay. I just have to ask this question of you, because you're doing kind of the opposite of what I'm doing. You're doing proper interactive stuff. So my basic question is, at this point, within what you have built, what is the mechanism to have some sort of a document in your environment that can actually be moved, held in your hand?
So for now, I'll need to think. There are a couple of ways, but let's say the closest thing I guess most people would think of as a document is either code with syntax highlighting, so couples of paragraphs, or actually even thousands of lines with colors on. That's a document. It's not the rendering of the document, so it's the source of the document, arguably, or a single line code snippets that are usually 80 characters long or less, usually. Or the third option is a rendering as just an image. And the fourth option is short HTML snippets. So let's say a simple page, not a proper page, but that can be a little bit interactive. So I would say that's the four main types of documents, arguably, that can manipulate like right now, and that it's easy to do. What, for example, it doesn't, and the most, again, closest to a document that people think of, when it's syntax lightning, you can have the scroll bar on the side and literally pull it and move it in order to scroll from page to page, or let's say go from 20 lines to line 20 to 40, 40 to 60, etc. But there is no pagination or manipulation of pages in a rendered document, for example. I
Okay,
think that covers it.
thank you. That's interesting. The reason I'm asking is I really think we should try to rise to the challenge of having at least some aspect of the book be readable in VR when we publish in December. We got to do something, no matter how good or bad it is. Got to put a stake in the ground this year. Last year was the year of AI beginning. This is the year of VR beginning. So if any of you have means to do that, ideas, yeah. Because otherwise we're saying it's too complicated to the whole world.
Well, I can say to the whole world, it's not complicated to do it unpleasantly.
Well, thank you for justifying Dini and my Sloan Foundation. That's exactly what it should say on the first page. This can be done currently, but unpleasantly. Because the thing is, just in terms of brass tacks, doing a Vision OS app is actually quite easy with current stuff. But then the question is, it's just in there in the floating screen, which is pathetic. At the very, very least, you should have a document you can go through all the pages. And I don't have the money to invest in a proper Vision app now. Not that we should do proprietary. This is just a small experiment. But there's got to be a way. We already had in the Mozilla hubs last year. You had to a limited extent, but just to open it up as one document and then do this to see the whole thing. Is that still rocket science?
No.
Okay. Shall we maybe, I'm very, very eager to get onto Michael's presentation and lots of talk today, but should we maybe schedule a session soon where we talk about only how to get the darn book into a headset to use as
So
little technology as possible?
if you want, and Michael will hate me for this, and I'm going to sound very impolite, but if I can listen with just one ear and watch with just one eye, I can try to do such a very basic prototype of having a bunch of pages and then, let's say, scrolling through in order to be able to manipulate through a document during this call.
Okay, well, I think that's provocatively good. May I give you what? Do you want HTML or the PDFs, or what do you want?
I'll take a random PDF of 20 pages.
Okay.
I mean, okay, I will not take a random one. I'll take what's literally on my desk. I'll take a research paper of a topic that might be interesting to people here too.
I just gave
and
you.
I think it's roughly the format we expect to manipulate.
I just gave you a link. Ha 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 ha.
Too late.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're clever enough to listen with quarter ear. So, yeah, have fun, Fabian. We look forward to seeing part of you, and we now look forward to listening to you, Michael.
Right. I'm terribly offended, Fabian, but I'm also very curious then again. So let me share my screen.
Dini, on another matter, I refer you to the text message I sent you.
All right, I guess this works. Can you all see it?
Yes, and just double checking that we are recording, that we didn't lose that. Okay, go for it.
All right. Then I'll try and give you some impressions of what I'm currently writing up in my PhD work. That's actually the title of my dissertation, Unraveling the Fidelity of Virtual Reality Interactions, the Effects of Realism in Object Manipulation and Embodiment. Before I go to the content of it, I thought I should maybe start with introducing myself again. Not sure if everybody was there the first time I was here and said hi for the first time. So my background is in social sciences originally. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communications, and then turned into a more technological direction with a Master of Science in Digital Media. And now I'm at the Digital Media Lab at Uni Bremen in my 5th year of the PhD, which focuses on VR interactions. I'm also doing some side projects on conversational interfaces. Almost nothing of it will make it to the dissertation, but it's always been great fun and also very fascinating field on the side. So it's about realism and fidelity, what I'm going to talk about now, right? But sometimes it's really just awesome not be restricted in VR by the boundaries of reality. You know, no annoying physical laws and limitations in perceptions. Well, we indulge in that sometimes, especially in entertainment, of course. Sometimes it's also essential that we have high realism, or at least desirable. A few examples why we should look at this at all. For example, in surgery, when we use VR or also teleoperation through VR, it is very important to have accurate manipulations in real time. Or in a home context for furniture planning, here's an example by IKEA. Does the new chair actually fit where it's supposed to go? And will I like it there or will I regret?
Funny. Sorry.
In virtual travels, it's also important to have authentic impressions of where I go. So here in Florence, for example, I want the virtual cathedral to look exactly as the real one and not just randomly as any cathedral could look like. Maybe I want to do some itinerary planning here. Or when we instruct robots, for example, how to accomplish everyday tasks. This is already being done with demonstration and imitation in VR. They need to learn with high realism what we are doing. And maybe we don't even want high realism, but just want the simulation to closely resemble something else, maybe another universe, far, far away, you know. Still, we want to resemble something. And this resemblance we can refer to as fidelity, or in this context, interaction fidelity, which I define as the degree of exactness with which reference interactions are reproduced. So these reference interactions can be based on reality, then we call it realism, but we can apply the term much more broadly and include other reference interactions such as superpowers or fictional references. So in this example, the reference interaction that could be reproduced is picking an apple. And this has been done a couple of times in and VR research, actually. In this example, it's from Wittevix. They have a sphere that serves as a proxy for the apple, and that gets rotated within the hand when grasping the apple, which has quite a high interaction fidelity in many aspects. As a fictional example, we could take the idea of a magic carpet on which you can fly. Here on the right side, as an example for VR interactions, it's one possible implementation. You can see Disney's Aladdin by Randy Pausch et al. From '96, which, however, also has a large design space and can be done in all kinds of ways, with all kinds all kinds of levels of fidelity. So this is the main concept that my dissertation revolves around, and here's an outline. Of course, it's too much to go into detail on everything, so I selected 3 works that I'll present in somewhat detail, and the others I'll just give you a teaser in a nutshell. So the bold works here I'll present to you now, starting with the interaction fidelity model. Why do we? Yes, please.
How much is synesthesia playing in this with you? I mean, because synesthesia is not fidel, right? There's nothing fidel about synesthesia for most people, but it's one of the really cool things you can do in VR. Are you playing with that at all and thinking about how that fits into the notion of fidelity?
Do I understand it correctly? Associating different kinds of modalities with each other, like colors and sounds?
Yeah, being able to
refer to?
Yeah, so like you know, in like I know people that smell color, right? We don't usually smell color, we see color. Or they hear color. And the one thing about synesthesia, one thing I loved about VR is the fact that we can actually, you know, show what that is. Like most people don't know what synesthesia is, but you can show them. So it's not really being fidel, you know, faithful to reality, but it's showing what reality is for some people.
Isn't it faithful? So in my eyes, fidelity must be considered very individually.
That's my question.
Because we all have different experiences of this world already. Why should it be any different for virtual environments? And putting ourselves into somebody else's shoes is one thing that can be so nicely done in VR, right? For example, embodying different avatars and having the impression of identifying as another gender or skin color or whatever we want to experience. So why not synesthesia?
Yeah, that's my question. So thank you.
Yeah. So here's the first work that I want to present. It's not even submitted yet. I hope we can submit it this week to Tokai. So consider this an early preprint. Why do we need a model at all that discusses interaction fidelity? I think it's a very multi-layered concept. While we're so quick to assess if something that we experience feels realistic or not, it's quite a complex construct that is made of different factors. And in research, this hasn't always been discussed adequately and is not always reported comprehensively. So we want to propose a model that helps us tick all the boxes and not miss any aspects and help understand what's going on in these interactions better. It's based on this classical HCI loop that has been conceived by David Owen and Don Norman and Stephen Draper. It's been around in HCR for a long time. A conceptual foundation that systematically covers all the stages when we interact with a computer-generated simulation. We will always have a user who performs some user actions, which is recognized by input devices. With transfer function, these goes into the computer. We have some kind of simulation going on in there. We render some output. This is displayed on output devices, which generate sensory stimuli that are then again perceived by the user. So we have quite a universal concept here that covers all interactions. And we thought, why not assign one factor or one component of fidelity to each of these stages? So we will go through all of these 8 fidelity components in detail now. Not in very detail, but so you get an impression on what's more or less behind it. Starting on the top right with action fidelity. So our user does something. How closely does that resemble what the user would do in a reference interaction? And here we include everything that the user does or is, any kind of active or passive behavior, which can be biomechanical, like pointing and walking, but also speech and gaze and blushing, also brain activity, or sheer existence is also something that can influence our environment and the experience of ourselves or the others. Next component is detection fidelity. How high the faithfulness of measuring these actions is. So they should be accurate, noiseless, reliable, and immediate to have high detection fidelity. And we have transfer fidelity. Here we recreate virtual actions from the user actions. So we transform and interpret them. Potentially, we also manipulate them doing this in the context of the simulation. So here, for example, we can have some remappings and other manipulations, like in redirected walking and stuff like that is going on here. Next is simulation fidelity, which is a very broad component that we also categorized in further subcategories because it's such a complex one. It includes virtual objects, beings, the scene, the physics, sound, any entity or logic going on here. A lot to discuss there. And now we're already on the output side, starting with rendering fidelity. So here we have the calculation of the output in terms of all modalities, which is transferred to our output devices. Again, covering all modalities, for example, the visual display of the ADHMD. The next factor is perceptual fidelity. So how closely does what the user perceives as physical cues from the simulated environment resemble what they would actually perceive in the reference interaction, including illusions and biases or also sensory substitutions. So this would be where I would, Dini, then see what you mentioned. And finally, experiential fidelity. So overall, what people perceive with all the side effects and all the illusions and everything, how closely does this resemble what they would? And this fulfills the loop. We can now categorize these factors a little bit more into input fidelity. On the other hand, we have output fidelity, and often it makes sense to cluster system fidelity or group it as one. So now we have this differentiation of these different components making up overall interaction fidelity. We think that everything in here lives on a spectrum. We did not assign numeric values to all of these because the devil is really in the detail here and will take many more years or decades of research until we figured out some reasonable measurements and quantification for all of these. Until then, we need to rely on more on broader terms like low, medium, and high fidelity to put things into relation and into perspective. With a theoretical maximum that we just called maximum fidelity, which is then just indistinguishable from the reference interaction. You know, thinking about the ultimate display of Ivan Sutherland, this could theoretically be reached and at least be compared to. So on this spectrum, we have three examples. To pick up the Apple example again, a low fidelity implementation overall could be when we use a mouse on a 2D plane to abstractly select that apple with a crosshair and then click to pick it up. Medium fidelity would be maybe if we have a handheld controller and we can physically reach there and enclose our hand around the apple to pick it. Also, we see that we have a hand avatar here that indicates where our hand is. And then again, the high fidelity implementation that we had in the beginning. What if we use a proxy or some kind of passive haptics prop to resemble the apple to increase the display fidelity further and also increase simulation fidelity with how the branches and the physics respond in that environment. Let's see how close we'll still get on that spectrum for picking apple or for anything else for that matter. The model can now be used as all kinds of for all kinds of purposes as a tool. What we've done now so far is mostly describe it and make it graspable better. In preparing this work, it has been very helpful in understanding what is going on in studies and in interaction techniques under the hood. You know, for example, with illusions and manipulations, discussing redirected walking we had as an example earlier. How are these things connected? Where do we increase? Or what's the English term? Accept that fidelity is lower for the benefit of gaining something else. How can we balance this? We can compare and analyze different systems, or for example, plan then the next iteration of a prototype. We can hypothesize and guide our user studies and research. And it's already been very helpful in teaching and convincing others of why we should go this and not that way. So breaking it down like that can be helpful in many different ways. And while one advantage is that it is very universally applicable, as I mentioned earlier, right? It covers every possible interaction in VR. We also have one limitation. Each component, as I pointed out earlier, can be looked at in much more detail. So this is really just the zoomed out version. And for one example, how we can zoom in much more, I'd like to move on to haptic feedback. With another work that we did for Kai 2 years ago, I think, which it's the Haptic Fidelity framework. Yes,
Can I just ask a question at this point?
Yeah.
Oh, Brandel is here. Oh, he's doing things. Oh, okay. Brandel came and went. Fair enough. Or is he here? No, he's not. Okay. So obviously this relates to real world items like an apple, and I think the breakdown is a really not breakdown. The vision is a really useful framework, but I'm wondering if this may also help us in the exact opposite, which is interacting with VR entities that have absolutely no bearing on reality. If you have thoughts on that at this point, or would you maybe like to address that after you go into the haptic fidelity framework?
I'll comment on it later a little bit when it comes to robots, because they also have no clue about what is going on in this world, with so many things that we just take for granted or think is obvious, but which is not for robots. Don't have a mental model of this world. So I'll comment a little bit on it later in the third section.
Okay.
And then we can gladly pick it up again. So let's briefly zoom into haptic feedback and how it's also not just one one component that is either high or low, but much more intricate. I'll spare you the introduction here with how important haptic feedback is. I think everybody in the call is very familiar with the impact it can have, and also the range of devices and concepts, how we can provide haptic cues of a large variety to the users. And since they're so different in how they're made up and what their goal is, it's quite tricky to find common ground here and to make them comparable. We had nothing else to do in COVID times than to look into that. And I, in the end, came out with two scales that describe it quite well. One of them is haptic fidelity, describing it from abstract to, well, it says here realistic. Now I would say high fidelity to use the more, the broader term, the more flexible term, and versatility as the other dimension. Here on that coordinate system, we see three examples. The handheld controller is quite an abstract haptic feedback provider with its vibrations, but therefore can also be employed very generically. Then on the other hand, we have a coffee mug as a prop, as a passive haptic proxy that gives us very detailed and realistic cues, but then again is specifically meant to do so for a coffee mug and nothing else. And somewhere in between, we have a force feedback glove that tries to be a compromise of both. So in the first dimension, the haptic fidelity dimension, we identified 14 factors categorized in sensing, hardware, and software. And to just pick two as examples so you get an idea of what else is in there. Let's look at body locations. This is a foundational factor which describes the degree to which the same locations on the body or body parts of the user are involved. And another example would be the magnitude, so the degree of to which the same intensity or variation of the stimulus are involved. We define these factors for all of the in detail in the paper if you're more curious. I'll quickly go over to for this presentation and point out the orthogonal versatility dimension, where we have just 5 different word missing here, as you can tell. So on the one side of the spectrum is it's very specific for just one particular variation of one use case, while on the other hand it's completely generic and not specific to any use case, can be used for any simulation. So for example, we said maximum versatility is something like a vibration in a handheld controller, and then on the left, the 0 would be, for example, a climbing wall that gives you proxies for holding on to, but only for this one route for climbing, right? It wouldn't even, if you're still climbing, but you want to do another boulder, then it's already too specific. In this case, in contrast to the interaction fidelity model, we tried to quantitatively assess the whole spectrum and calculate an overall haptic fidelity score from that. There's also an online tool where you can input your own assessments of a system, and then it automatically calculates the score for you, and you can compare it to everything that we analyzed in the paper, which we did to validate the score. So we looked into 38 papers that met our conditions, that had some kind of standardized questionnaire, like the presence questionnaire by Whitman Singer or others. And the only changing variable in the studies mentioned there was the haptic feedback. And we then calculated the two Pearson correlations, comparing the effect sizes from these differences and the differences in haptic fidelity scores. So on the left, you can see that the more scores of 2 conditions differed, the higher also the perceived difference in realism was, which tells us it has a large overlap with what people found already in studies, how we calculate this score. And also on the right side, you can see the higher the haptic fidelity, the less versatile a system usually is. There are only a few good compromises. So for example, on the top right hand, we have then force feedback gloves, for example. But the trend is pretty strong here. All right, so that's the theoretical part of the dissertation. Let's put it into practice quickly with 2 examples from empirical research. Two examples of empirical research that are grouped under using grip for rotational grip, for rotational control. It's 2 works that are behind this, one at IEEE VR and one at Frontiers. The one is the first is controller based, and the second is using a force feedback glove. So it's been motivated through this wonderful kitchen simulation, which is supposed to instruct robots to tasks like setting a table. We're facing various problems in the simulations, as you can tell. There are many things to work on, but one of the issues that I always had when playing around with this is, well, the hands, obviously, but also that we cannot control the rotation of the glasses nicely. It felt so different from what we do in reality. Please stop here, please. Okay. So in VR, we have this problem of a bad angle when we pick something up and want to put it down. We have to twist our wrist quite uncomfortably, and it just feels wrong. We can also regrasp it, of course, so pick it up in a better angle. That's more convenient, okay? But we need to clutch for this. Or, of course, we can throw the glass and catch it, but that needs skills and is uncontrolled and unreliable. Objects falling down. So if we want to instruct a robot how to put the dishes from the dishwasher to the cupboard, for example, I don't want it to learn how I throw around glasses in my kitchen. That's not how I behave. I want to reproduce real life behavior. So what is the reference interaction that we try to reproduce here? Well, you can pick up a cup or a glass yourself from the floor. You would usually hold it like that. And if you then put it down somewhere, you let it rotate freely within your hand. And that's not what usually happens in VR, right? Once we grab something, the rotation is fixed. And accordingly, I rotate the object with my hand. So we thought, okay, when we want to simulate these human capabilities of variable grip, we want to control how firmly we hold on to something. So we can either hold objects firmly, or we let it loose and rotate freely to correspond to the pull of gravity. We implemented that and did a user study with a controller-based system first. We had the task to move glasses from a start to a target position. 15 glasses in each task. We had 4 tasks, 2 horizontally and 2 vertically. We compared 4 different interaction modes of possible interaction techniques, how this could be implemented. We asked 28 participants to do this, and in the end had 6,720 glasses that were moved from A to B. And here's what we observed. It comes to no surprise that it takes time to adjust the grip. So in our task, in our case, the participants needed about 10% longer with a variable grip. We had similar precision, slightly more clutching, and lower frustration rates. And in the questionnaires on usability, we've seen better ratings in terms of control, and realism was also perceived as more comfortable and less difficult and more intuitive and other things. So overall, a higher usability when they could control the grip like that. And in the end, we had a preference of 2/3 who would repeat the task only with variable grip.
Michael, can I ask you a question now? We're not using controllers or building modeling gloves, right? That you can actually that are able to move your fingers, right, and grip. Have you done any testing to see if there's a better response to that than there are with trying to use controllers, as you're showing here in this video? This animation?
A beautiful transition. That's what we did next.
Yeah.
There were two follow-ups that we were curious about. The first was doing it with Valve Index, which a Danish team picked up on. They did a study on that and found similar performance and usability, but perceived and found that people perceived it as more realistic, as you could use grip. Also, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the index controllers. You have that plate in the handle, and the stronger you push the stronger you pull together your hand, the stronger you hold something, or you can, for example, burst something or manipulate it in different ways, and that we could use the grip directly as a means of input. So this Danish team did a study on that. It was presented at an IEEE VR workshop. And we ourselves did a follow-up study using force feedback gloves. In this case, the Sense gloves, DK1. And it was supposed to be a big advancement because we have higher action fidelity, right? We actually enclose the object with our fingers and move them in to grasp it. And then we have higher haptic fidelity too, through the resistive forces that we get from the object. But it turned out to be different. We again had a user study with 3 different objects at this time: a book, a milk carton, and a can. And we used 21 users to do 2 different tasks with them that I'm not going into detail here. But we found much worse results. They were about 40% slower with this system. It was slightly less precise. There was more clutching going on, and the frustration and mental load increased drastically. Also, in the questionnaires and the interviews that we conducted, people reported less perceived agency over that. So why, if we have higher fidelity to better resemble what we do in real life, why is the outcome worse? How did that happen? We have a couple of explanations that we discuss in the paper here. Most importantly, there were difficulties with the Sense glove itself. Already in the baseline, the task load index was much higher, and the performance was quite poor, even with firm grip, because the system did not work reliably enough that the user could use it. The users could use it confidently. We had mostly novice users who then said they felt really challenged overall by the glove. And then the steep learning curve, additionally, of having this interaction technique where you control another parameter yet. Also, there were missing haptic cues that we didn't consider at first. So yes, we had a resistance from the surface, from the shape of the object, but we didn't have any friction at the fingertips. And these tangential forces are not rendered by such a glove, or at least not by this glove, only the kinesthetic forces. And research in haptic perception shows that so they did some great experiments where they, with anesthesia of the fingertips, to see how people respond there. And people tend to drop objects and use overly strong pressure to hold on to something because they just don't have a feel for it. And that's pretty much also what happens when using the gloves. There was no intuitive control over this. So what happened is that we fell right into this uncanny valley of virtual interactions, as Ryan McMahon coined it some years back. Users are really good with low fidelity interfaces because they understand that kind of mapping that's going on once, practice it a little bit, and master it. And we're also good with really high fidelity interfaces because we're used to that from our real life experiences. But just closely before that, if we increase some aspects of fidelity, but not everything sufficiently, people are confused because they assume they can behave as in reality, as they're used to. But it turns out objects are falling down then. And this is one of the patterns that we describe in our interaction fidelity model. We identified some connections between those aspects, and Ryan McMahon is also one of the co-authors on this work. So this is just one example of things. What can we take from this now? How can we work with this? So that was one of the examples from the empirical research I present in my dissertation. The others that are not highlighted here, don't worry, I'll just share one slide of each to give you a quick impression of what it's about, and I'll end my talk. Here's a work on self-reporting in VR. It's a Kai paper where we explored design choices for having the questionnaires, standardized questionnaires of VR user studies directly in the virtual environment. There's also related work on the break in presence that occurs if you do not integrate it directly in VR and just take users out to have it to have them fill it out on the desktop computer or on paper. This work is on creating a sense of weight by manipulating the resistance that you get from pulling the trigger on a controller. Here we mapped the weight of the objects to the strength that, or the force that you need to pull back the trigger. So if you pick up something heavier, you must pull harder to pick it up. This work is on foot visibility when kicking, where we did some penalty shooting. Half of the sample could see their virtual foot, the other half could not see their virtual foot. And we did something very similar with hands in a frisbee simulation, with either showing or not showing the virtual hands. Here's the only paper from my work on conversational interfaces, as there's nice overlap.
Hang on. The previous slide was so really interesting.
Yes.
We have to know, for the foot and the hand, which one was actually better performance? I put my guess in the comments, but I really want to know.
You put it in the chat? Oh, then I don't spoiler myself. We didn't compare between the two. So I'm not...
Did it help having the hand and the foot or not?
It did, yes.
Okay.
Especially for kicking, it showed that people could shoot much more precisely. So you would assume, as in the professional soccer players don't look at their feet while shooting, right? They look at the target. Yeah. So as an easy assumption would be it's not necessary. But still, we also had professional soccer players in our sample. We had novices and professionals and compared if they would need it differently. But even the soccer players needed to get accustomed to the virtual environment and figure out where their foot is. So it actually helped both groups to improve their shooting.
What about the hands one also?
It wasn't so clear here. Actually, let me have a look at the poster hanging right over there. So the accuracy and the perceived realism was higher, but not the perceived body ownership.
I think that's what's so great about your presentation today. What you have, and I'm not saying you finished, but so far what you've really shown me is, I know it sounds maybe trivial coming back to you, but this is a different world. So the way you've been describing the different means of grasping isn't how we grasp in the physical world. And that is why we have maybe why we have the uncanny valley. So I can imagine with a frisbee type thing, it's really refined movements to throw a frisbee properly. And if that isn't reflected completely accurately with the object and the area, then it may actually throw you off a little bit. That's why I'm wondering about this particular one.
We observed that already before the throwing, when already picking up the object. That's where it was challenging for people with no hands. Because due to the missing haptic feedback, you don't feel the shape, you don't feel the size or the extent of that object in front of you. So it's harder to relate to it and get a feel for it when throwing. And all this shows that it's not just a one-dimensional thing, but that so many different aspects come together and in their interaction create a credible effect or not, or a high performance or not. So 2 more to go. This one from CUI, so the Conference on Conversational User Interfaces. here we compared how people react to the visualization of the agents that they usually just hear in their homes. Usually we just have the tiles here, for example, on how long it takes to cook an egg. And we tested how does it work when people can see either a digitally rendered avatar as shown here, or a photorealistic avatar where we used an actor so it looks as realistic as possible. And how differently people would like to have the embodiment of their voice agents in their homes or not. And lastly, this is another COVID study. We decided to move away from our usual Zoom meetings, as we had so many of them in lockdown times, and equipped everybody in our lab with HMD, with Quests mostly, but also different headsets, and conducted our meetings in different VR environments. On the top right, there's Altspace, which doesn't even exist any longer. And number 3 here is Engage VR. And then also had a hybrid version where we had some spatial arrangements of people, but still with a video feed in number 4. And compared the meeting experiences in our team and how people authentically would like to continue with this exploration. And in the end, so the paper is titled "Seeing Faces So Important." In the end, we moved back to Zoom with that one of the main reasons. All right, so that was the other stuff that's in the dissertation in a nutshell. Of course, there are other works too, but they're not mentioned in the PhD anyway, so I'll just reduce it to that.
Michael, I was going to say, I worked in Moos and Muds back in the early to mid 90s. And then when we switched into Second Life, you might remember, or you've seen Second Life, we just found it, even though we were able to interact and have these avatars in these environments, we found it so unsatisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're showing there is the same thing. It's like, it doesn't matter. What really matters is the ability to communicate the best way possible in the Second Life environment, despite its use of all these, super high-end visuals. It got in the way of the communication and the relationships.
Now, it really depends largely on what your goal is. And the goal of our meetings turned out is not so much to convey information and to recreate a physical get-together of people, but it's actually more an emotional change of, there are still the same colleagues in the room, and I can see everybody laugh and be desperate about the lockdown going on, and have some authentic insights into what was going on with people.
The meta meetings I've attended for conferences, the DH community loves meta. And they have been so horrible, because when you, in this meta environment we were using, when you encountered another member in the meta environment, you didn't hear their voices. You saw a little bubble over their head. It looked like the Sims game, right? It's like I'm playing Sims for an academic conference. It just was goofy as all get out. So
yeah, the IEEE VR conferences were also on Virbella. It was also an odd experience, especially because it was not even compatible with VR. You couldn't even move around or talk to somebody nicely. So everybody was on their desktop PCs anyway and moving with WASD through that virtual environment.
For the meta environment, in one case, that we were going over this large environment, trying to find the different rooms, so to speak. And people were getting lost. They couldn't navigate the damn space. And so it defeated the purpose of bringing people together. It was during lockdown, right? So we're trying desperately to find other ways except Zoom. And it just was goofy, and nobody wanted it back. So.
Yeah. We in our paper also support the notion of that there was that popular publication on reality-based interactions, and they suggest to only decrease realism if you benefit in another way. And then you often have to consider what is actually the purpose of this interaction here. And if it stands in the way of something else, don't enforce realism just because it's closer to a real thing or closer to whatever you want to simulate.
Yeah, I also say thank you. And see, Dini had to rush off. That's fair enough. But yeah, I'm very grateful for this. This is the kind of rigor that we need, and it's very inspirational, both in the direction you're going and the opposite. You know, to try to figure out where this is. So I repeat my question earlier today, and that is, what would you like out of the community? And I think maybe, have you submitted an article for the book? I don't think you have.
No, I haven't.
Can
I
you
wouldn't
please-
know on what. So my work on text, as you could tell so far, has been limited.
Oh,
Um,
it's not that simple. It is simpler than that. The book is primarily on work in XR, and I think you have a unique perspective. It's not that we're talking about holding apples in VR, but you have really gone into looking at things properly and real. So if you have any thoughts on working in XR with documents, partly with text, if you want to do a paragraph or a page or a massive thing, makes absolutely no difference. But the reason I would like you in there, because I really like your thinking and your analytics. And also what might benefit you is you will be with other names in the book. But also in a few years, this will have been published this year, along with your other ACM stuff. You know, we're trying to get a lot of stuff out there before specifically the Apple one hits. Quest is already there. So yeah, that would
when
be
people start looking who's working on this already.
Yeah, and you know, it is really, really important to dream. So we have to really balance the. Sorry, I'm just going to post everyone a link here. It's really important to dream, but we must know on what foundation we are dreaming.
Now,
And
I'll think
and
of
that
something.
concludes the meeting for today. Oh, Alan is here. Sorry, couldn't help it. Sorry, Michael, please go ahead. Alan, we just saw Michael's presentation for what research is doing for his degree, which would be really nice, you know, to go through the video, forget all the nonsense in the beginning, but you may enjoy that. But yes, Michael, you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, I'll think of something that I can write up for the book.
Thank you.
For the long term, I'm curious to see what my next chapter will look like, and it will finance it. So if I'd be longer in academia, I would be very optimistic that I still have a lot of opportunity to do whatever I'm curious in, and then I would love to be involved here. But since I'll move to the industry, it might be a bit trickier than that kind of dreaming. So let's see where I end up and what my employer and I would agree on how this collaboration would be fruitful.
Michael, hey, I apologize. We've never really had a chance to talk. I've been sort of sporadically joining. I'd love to. I know you just did your presentation and everything, but I'd love to hear. Is there time to hear just like a little bit of like what you're about, what your vibe is? You said you're just going into the industry. You're finishing up your academic tenure.
Yeah, I'm currently writing up my PhD thesis. So I'll be done around April. And then it's still very much open.
Okay. Is it more on the side of I don't know, text or VR or learning, teaching? Is there a
So far, I've worked on interaction design for VR mostly and conversational interfaces on the side. And
Okay.
well, how it came, how I ended up here is from a discussion with Vint Cerf. We met at the Heidelberg Laureate Forum last and this year, and we talked about what things will need to change for VR to actually work. And I said, well, text, obviously. He said, oh, okay, that's interesting. You should meet for
Perfect. Perfect.
Here
That's
I am.
history. Yeah, Alan, what was very interesting with Michael's presentation and work is the notion of fidelity in XR, VR, AR. And that is really, really important for very specific things. But then when you're dealing with knowledge objects, it can become really opposite of that. And I think to have this to define yourself in relation to, sorry, I'm just dealing with a private secret message there from Fabian that I will share with everyone in a few seconds. Also, Alan, we're thinking about how to get the darn book, at least some of it, into XR. So,
Well, that's a totally different topic. Okay. But I love the fidelity angle. Even there's probably about like 3 different ways fidelity could be defined in context of VR. So it's that
What are
VR
these?
and knowledge. What's that?
What are these 3 different angles?
So you could, if I hear fidelity, I could be thinking of the granularity, the precision of the representation of text, aka pixels, etc., right? Or fidelity meaning the different ways that you can clearly represent what the ideas in a book or a segment are, right? That's the 2, I guess, main branches, right? Fidelity to meaning or fidelity to artifact. And there's and the third is sort of like a branch off of the fidelity to meaning, because to some that can mean, oh, we can solve the problem with a graph of relations, and to another it's like, no, what we need is something more multimodal, or if we're not going to have the text, we have to have audio, and then some kind of like thinking about text as a game, right? So audio versus visual, maybe we can get to the meaning that way. Anyway,
so I won't dive into very deep, but just give you a 10-15 second summary of my stance on fidelity. We developed a framework or a model in interaction fidelity, and we see it as the degree of exactness with which a reference interaction is reproduced. Here are 2 examples of an apple that is being picked and a magic carpet that can be interpreted or implemented differently for a locomotion technique. And from this, we came up with a model that breaks down different factors of fidelity to describe all kinds of VR interactions. And coming to text now, I think the most interesting question is, what parts of the reference interactions should we reproduce at all? And which should we be glad about that we can leave behind because we're not restricted by those annoying boundaries of reality, but can invent it afresh and with how it makes more sense in a 3-dimensional environment where we can place pixels just everywhere.
That's fantastic. Wow, this is excellent. Yeah, there is I think a lot of the talk of text in VR is closer to the rendering and fidelity side, and perhaps not as much on the simulation or the experience. If you're not trying to because the page itself, a PDF, is a skeuomorph of the physical page. So if you don't have to have that, then what do you get? Do you get something that is boundless, and then is that a worse experience for comprehension? Do you need some kind of artificial scaffolding to understand what you're reading or gathering, or is there a yeah, I love it.
I think much of that will happen down here somewhere.
Yeah,
simulation and rendering, but yeah, it really depends on what you want to do with the text, right? And how closely you want to pick up people from what they're used to and what their obvious understanding of what text should be is.
Yeah, agreed. I think a lot of time, so much the case with, I don't know, all science and all philosophy is a case of unlearning what we think is the ground truth. And I can definitely sense something of that maybe happening when it comes to text to VR. Like if it became trivial to translate words into images that are either sequential or animation or, you know, interactive, and that many of the ideas can be represented in some kind of interaction, speaking specifically, you know, like sort of data white papers, not necessarily Dostoevsky. Would that become the preferred medium, you know, visual, interactive? Would it be more intuitive to learn that way than to read through these chunks of text? So when simulations, that's what simulation means to me. It's maybe not even the right word. It's transposition, perhaps. Anyway, that's really fantastic. I love what you're working on. From what I understand, I'll check out the video, the demo afterwards.
So let's have a look now. So I'm just cleaning up our webpage. What Fabian just put together. Who has a headset readily available to have a quick peek?
I might be able to screencast, and
okay. You can do that.
I can try because it's a short cable, so I'll probably get stuck somehow. But
guys, you need to have them charged up and ready. You know, we're going to be doing that more and more.
It's dangling on a cable here still, so it's charged all right.
Okay. So
what are you building with?
So it's A-frame. It's on WebXR, so there is nothing to download, and that's why Frode shared the link a bit earlier.
Just checking, Fabian. Just 1 second, Leon. Are you here properly, or just in the background? Because we're using we're beginning to use kind of the upload thing here.
Okay. I will check it.
Okay. Right now it is only Fabian doing on his own thing, but I did introduce everyone to the GitHub earlier today. So whoever wants access, there is on that page, there is a link to it and requesting, and here we go. Okay, let's have a look. Let's cross our eyes and have stereo view, right, guys?
I can't. Can you see it though in a whatever format? I'll quit. I'll reload the page and I explain.
Yes, looks great. So, I feel like I'm a spy insect.
Yeah, I was going to say a bug, exactly.
So that's the rendering of the PDF of that document that was here, I guess, on my desk. And I can grab it and move it along, especially since from this it's really not convenient to read, so I can bring it a bit closer. And then I have those two functions there, backward and forward. And if I pinch them, which is the typical action in my, sorry for the grid, it's the system, and with the distance I can't do both. So I can move this page along, the new page I can move along, and then I can flip to the next page, the next page, the next page, and go through the document like this. So as you can see, the black somehow has become some transparency, which is weird. The conversion is not great, and then it basically shifts all the documents, and the other one that are there are too far for my short cable, but then I can also go back on the current page to the current page. So I add pages one after the other, and the goal being that they were roughly readable. Like, I don't know if I can read it basically, and I can keep on going through the document like this. So voila, far from perfect, but kind of usable. And for if you're not familiar with the system, if you use this line, the make anchor visible on target, then with each document, if you don't pinch in the middle, you have those little blue spheres that help you to find them better.
Very
Nice,
cool,
quick and
Fabian.
dirty prototyping.
Oh, perfect.
It's as dirty as it gets, indeed.
So here's a question particularly for Fabian and Michael. What should, please excuse my language, please don't fly to London and punch me in the face. What should virtual paper feel like?
Haptically, you mean?
I don't know what I mean.
So I also don't know, but I have haptic gloves, and indeed, when I want to reach either interactable part of the document, I would want to feel something. I don't want to. Here it's very awkward. That's why I add the blue sphere as it's an interaction point to be explicit. But ideally, I would hide them because it deteriorates readability. But if I could at least feel what is interactive. The letter themselves, honestly, if I could, I would. In terms of precision, that doesn't seem realistic. But like if I'm very delicate and it's good paper and all, I can feel the actual letters. Beyond that, I don't know. Maybe folding even directly. If we stick to metaphors or analogies with the real world, quote unquote, I might want to feel the resistance when I start to bend the virtual paper.
I think
I
about.
must think about.
Go ahead.
I must think about the e-readers, Kindle and the like, because I was so surprised back then when it came out, and I thought, oh wow, this is a game changer. This makes books so much better because you can have unlimited reading material in your small suitcase. All the hassle gone, and so many people in my closer bubble hated it because they want to smell the paper, they want to feel the books, they want to hear going through a page and be like, have the real thing. And for this, carry tons of paper on them. I was astonished.
So Michael, you are hereby officially never allowed to leave this group.
Ah,
All right.
There is nothing wrong with liking the smell and feel of a book, but that doesn't mean that's the only way to read. Absolutely.
Now,
So I have a kind of a follow-up question to that, and just by thinking this through, and that is, how about an environment where you can read with everything out, whatever, and if you want to interact with something, you're not Tom Cruise making your arms go dead. You punch it or point it or whatever it is, and it comes down on the table in front of you. So the table has to be mapped perfectly. So it's exactly at the height of the table. So if you touch, at least you have the feedback of the table. Would that make sense?
Yes, and I don't think it's honestly difficult to do in the sense that now one of the new feature in WebXR and in native is that you can annotate your room. So for example, I can, when I do the room setup, for example, on even the old Quest 1, let's say, still does it. So you can say that's a window, and when I pitch in a certain way, or if I do whatever action or gesture, stick it to that wall or that desk, and then it's going to appear as a, like in the metadata of how you enated the space. This is the desk, and thus you pin on it or whatever. So that technically that's not a problem. Would it be more efficient or not? I don't know. Also, for a quick anecdote, I did not disable the feature for the demo. So if you use your left wrist, where I have my watch basically, there is a laser pointer, and then it pulls the document closer to you. So I had it like very much on my face, and the document initially was like a meter and a half. It was more like a poster, an A0 poster than an A4. So I got attacked by the document on the first test. So you don't have to necessarily pinch or feel the document. I think it's maybe, I don't know, it feels more immediate, but yeah, you don't need to. You can just, even looking at it, actually, you don't even need to do any gesture. The gestures there, in my opinion, are more if you want to finally put them in place, like I think most of us like to do with how do you say, post-it notes. But if you just want to interact in a efficient way, looking at it should be sufficient.
That's really wonderful. Now, with current WebXR, could you also designate a physical movable object, for instance, like this pen, so that it knows where the tip is, so that you can
No.
use that? No?
No, but what you can do is you can have the controller as a thick as pen, though, and especially with the Quest Pro, you also have the pencil tip, and that works. You can use those controllers, and it's obviously not the same as this, but it's still you can write on your
Fabian,
actual
it's
desk.
horrible. It's a crayon. It's horrible.
It exists. It's horrible yet infinitely better than nothing.
Nobody
Actually,
wants a stylus.
when
Hear
it
somebody
comes,
say.
yeah, I know, Mr. Jobs, right? Yeah, well, no, Fabian, with the dearest and lovingest respect, I don't agree with you. When it comes to products, not necessarily even in the commercial sense, how it's implemented is more important than if it can be implemented. Because if it doesn't feel for the particular user elegant or whatever the language might be, it's just not for them. You know what I mean?
Sure, but you wouldn't even be able to say it's shit if you don't actually try it. So I
Oh,
think that's
no,
still
no.
a good thing.
Oh, I've tried it. I mean, I've done the Horizon workroom where you have when you use the upside down controllers. Yeah, no, absolutely. But how much work do you think it would be to make this understandable in XR space?
It's very hard. I mean, no, you have with dedicated hardware. Yes, no. I think Wacom has some, and if you don't mind having some like bit bulgy thing on the back, or some computer vision, and for example, that has a special color. Maybe just that actually. Maybe just that might be enough. Would it be reliable enough and going through hand tracking and all? I don't know. And would it be really worth it compared to even that thick thing? I think it might be arguable because this is, no matter how heavy and huge it is actually quite reliable.
Yeah.
And that's also valuable. If it works half of the time, no matter how slick it is, I don't know.
You've taken design principle and counted my design principle. So over to Alan. I'm sure he's got another one.
I was going to throw this out there as a different point of view, as tends to be my way. This is from an old book, I think 2016, and maybe it doesn't have anything perhaps directly to do with VR, but I'll let you be the judge of that. It has to do with app enthusiasm, and how, you know, everything for a while everything is an app. And so this is from the book The Best Interface is No Interface. And this is a pretty nice example where he's saying, like, you know, he walks up to his car, he wants to open the car door. I want to open my car door, so I reach into my pocket and carefully pull out my smartphone because I definitely don't want to drop something made of glass and thin metal into the cement parking lot. Step three, I wake up my phone. I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone and almost unconsciously I regrip my smartphone to wake up my phone by pressing and clicking the main button. 4, unlock my phone. I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone and hit the circular home button at the bottom of my phone. You can kind of get the gist here. 5, I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone. I see my last open application. I hit the home button to exit the application, or hopefully don't get distracted. 6, I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone, see the group of applications. You know, it goes from there to scanning and picking out the right, you know, where the application is.
You completely skip the part where you start reading what was last on your screen, and 5 minutes later you figure out that's not what I wanted to do.
Exactly.
Why did I come here? Right, I wanted to
Exactly.
open the car door.
Right. Yeah, that is, he was merciful that way. Step 8, I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone and tap the app icon to open the car app. Then there's this. Then there's another page of that. Then step 9, I want to open my car door, so I look down at my phone and see a beautiful map of North America. Step 10, I want to open my car doors, so I look down at my phone. I've got a lot of choices. I cross my fingers and tap the control tab option at the bottom. I mean, this is a true story, so like it's not like this was how it was at a time. So the point is that and the successful action is called data transfer successful. So the door has opened, but he is just going on faith and hope that that data transfer successful means the car door has been unlocked. And the point is that his goal was to physically open the car door, which he could have done with keys. Now he has all of these steps with a digital interface. Mercedes figured out this problem 10 years prior to the writing of this book. Siemens did the technology where if your keys are close to the car unlocks, right? And he was saying, like, so you've got that as one example where there's no interface. And then you've got this other way that just because it's new technology and everybody's excited about it, you've actually created all these extra steps. So I think about that in terms of a couple of things, but one of them is like paper, digital paper, virtual paper. When we open a Kindle, do we think of that as paper or do we think of that as a screen? When in a VR sense, is paper even what's desirable? Like how do we do the same exercise of opening the car door to, I want to read, like information, and you have the thing on your head, right? Like, is it that, there's a sentence that's always present over in the corner of the very last thing you read, so you can go and do other things, but if you glance over at it, it sort of comes back into center, and now you can proceed sentence by sentence. Thinking in terms of paper in the virtual sense might be a limiting category error, right? If we're trying to instead focus on what's the quickest way to get to the goal of the user, which in one sense may be comprehension, or deep diving, or another sense it may just be trying to scan as quickly as possible. Okay, done.
Before we go to Michael, anyone have a comment on specifically that with Alan? The series of questions you had there are really, really important. I just also wanted to say that, Leon is running. See you later, Leon. But this is one of the things we are working on. The first step is how to get the damn document into XR. So that's why we now have a GitHub and all of that good stuff, because you are doing it at a more granular and important level, but we are at least addressing the very basics of that, because currently to read anything in XR is just as dumb as opening a car in that sense. Also, Alan, everybody, please at least try our reader. It's free. I noticed you were using Preview. Sorry. Please.
Oh yeah, so I was printing it, so that was my default reaction. But yes, I have Reader.
Oh. Anyway, okay. See you later, Peter. I see you have to go. And Michael, please.
Yes, I wanted to come back to your question with the table, because it reminded me of that vision that they used to have at Xerox Park decades ago, that everybody just has their private output devices, but everything else is very much exchangeable, that everybody has their tablet reader or something Star Trek-y device, and that's the only thing that you'll ever need for anything. I wondered if everybody just has their personal paper, blank copy paper and we project everything on that, if this will, in perspective, in, I don't know, 10 or 20 years in the future, when we are good enough with bendy materials and projections to give people the I have paper in my hand experience, filling it with whatever exchangeable content they want.
That sounds very Alan Laidlaw-ish.
Yeah, I'm working on that and with folks that are way far along on projection technology. It's called Folk Computer, and they're actually it's breathtaking what they've already been able to do, and what they have in mind is literally like projecting onto paper, a PDF, but also the paper has memory, so you can flip the page over and see the next page, of the PDF, and like pass it on to someone else, and it'll sort of keep.
So-
It's still at slow frame rate, so that like you can't move it around too fast, but it's pretty wild.
I the anecdote. I set it up this weekend, so that's why I have the this little I don't know, feet or whatnot.
Yes.
You put the video projector on top, and then to display on my table, and then you print the markers and all. I'm still honestly wrapping my head around this, but if people are
You
familiar
mean
with
physically,
yes, physically.
not just in VR?
Yeah, no, physical. It's wild.
What's the
You actually have
company?
to have a projector overhead. So Fabian, you're setting it
Right.
up this week? That's fantastic.
I got it working this weekend.
What company or people? Come on, guys. Share.
But you know already Omar. He gave a presentation on something. I'm not sure if it's public or not, so maybe not mentioning it, but related to computer vision a couple of months ago, I believe.
Yeah. And the information, if you want to set it up with your yourself, is folk.computer/pilot.
It's honestly worth exploring. The one thing though is it's still have to wrap your head around it, and it's more fun collaboratively. It's not federated or network right now, as far as I know, and it's very experimental. But let's say contrary also to Dynamic Land and a few others, it should be properly open soon, if I understood correctly. Whereas Dynamic Land is if you're not physically in Auckland, it's a problem, or it doesn't exist basically.
Hey, I may need an underground railroad to Europe, by the way. Apparently Trump is beating Biden in all of the early polls.
Yeah, it's amusing, isn't it? Music in the worst possible way.
Using in the way that you kind of lose your lunch and you have to get intravenously fed. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Fabian, I want to hear more about that, and also perhaps even some of the I heard from Andres some of the partnerships that you may have helped line up and etc. or talked about. That's
I
very
will
interesting.
do eventually a presentation on that relatively soon, I hope, but not.
Fantastic.
We're going to finish on time today, but Alan or Fabian, do you know the Folk Computer guys enough to invite them for A, presentation, and B, maybe an article?
It was planned. I mean, it was planned to invite.
Okay, sooner equals better. Having it down this year is the best. My job as publishing editor is to push people to do work so I don't have to.
Makes sense.
So I just want to say I'm extremely grateful for today. I'm extremely grateful for you guys. As I said, it's been a tough week for several reasons. And to come here and, including what you're talking about, Alan, politics, several things going on in the world that are absolutely so unbelievably fucking horrendous, it can't be put into words. So to come here with a bunch of people who are trying to figure out how we can communicate and work better, pardon my swearing again, what a fucking antidote that is. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you in a week. If there's anything else, I am available through channels. But before we end, we must do a proper happy birthday to Fabian. Are you all ready to do the worst singing of your lives?
Oh my gosh, such a shame I must go.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Happy
Come on, you're
birthday.
muted, Mark. Everybody, Michael, Alan. Happy birthday.
Asynchronously,
to you.
awesome.
Yeah,
Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
Fabian.
dear Fabio.
my gestures are
Happy
my song.
birthday
Happy
to
birthday
you.
to you.
And on that note, bang on time. See you all later. Bye.
Thanks a lot,
Take care.
everyone.